I'm honestly a little bit nervous to be making this video because right now calorie counting is not trendy. Everyone is trying to avoid it. And that's something I totally understand, especially for people who've had an eating disorder in the past or if tracking calories makes them feel obsessive or out of control. But because it's not trendy right now, I avoided it for the first 9 months of my fat loss journey. And that was a huge mistake for me personally because I wasted so much time feeling like I was working really hard at fat loss, but not actually getting into a deficit and not getting the results that I wanted. Once I started tracking, it accelerated my fat loss like crazy. I love data, so let's talk numbers. So between March of 2023 and December of 2023, I lost about 10 pounds across a 10-month period. So that averages out to be about 0.25 pounds per week. In December of 2023, I started tracking on and off, and by the end of January, I was tracking consistently. Between January 2024 and the end of April 2024, I lost another 10 pounds, which meant that I lost weight over twice as fast during that period for an average of 0.625 pounds per week. Calorie counting is a really incredible tool that can allow a lot of flexibility within your diet, and it's allowed me to have fun, enjoy my life while still getting the results that I want. For me, it's also taught me that all foods can fit into a healthy diet and kind of expanded my perspective on fat loss and health in general. Before I was tracking, I was really intense about trying not to eat any unhealthy foods, things like pizza or cookies or cake or treat foods. But now, because I know exactly how I can fit those foods into my diet while still getting results, I don't feel upset or guilty when I enjoy myself and have these treats anymore, which for me has been really freeing and actually very positive. There are some downsides to calorie counting. I mean, the main one being that it's annoying. It can also be really time consuming. But in today's video, I'm going to share all of the ways that I count my calories even with a busy schedule. Throughout the day, I'll be sharing what I'm eating, how I track it, and all my tips and tricks to make tracking as easy and quick as possible. First thing we need to talk about is tracking apps. So personally, I use MyFitnessPal. Reason being, they have a massive database where almost every food you could imagine or think of has already been entered into the database with all of the nutritional information. I also love that MyFitnessPal is free. There is a paid version available, but I don't subscribe to it and I don't think you really need it. I would not, though, use the calorie and macro recommendations built into the app. Those are just really, really bad. I would calculate yourself. So if we're not using MyFitnessPal's target, then what do we do? I know the majority of people getting into tracking do want to be in a calorie deficit and lose weight, so we're going to focus on that specifically. We can get complicated with this fast, but I'm going to give just a basic beginner strategy, which is actually the one that I am using for myself right now. First thing, calculating our maintenance calories. I can make a separate video on this if anyone's interested. Leave a comment and let me know, but I like to use the Mueller equation, which I will link some info on in the description, and this will give us our maintenance calories, or the amount of calories that we can eat without gaining or losing any weight. Then I will take that and calculate a calorie deficit, or the amount I'm going to decrease my daily calories by to reach my weight loss goal. Personally, I like to use a 10 to 20% deficit from maintenance, and there are a few reasons for this. First, this range is conservative enough that it helps me to prevent muscle loss, which is super important, and ensure I can get lasting, sustainable results, because when we lose weight too fast, it tends not to be as sustainable. But it's also enough of a deficit that I will see those results, because if our deficit is too small, our body can make small adjustments to our metabolism so we actually don't lose any weight. Personally, I save time by tracking just calories and not macros. So I do pay a little bit of attention to protein because eating enough protein is an essential part of preserving muscle during fat loss. But in terms of the carb and fat makeup of my day, it doesn't really matter. For fat loss, the main thing is just being in a calorie deficit. If you are thinking about tracking, food scales are essential. And honestly, I can't believe I wasn't using a food scale before I started tracking, because it makes life so much simpler whenever you're baking or cooking. Rather than measuring everything out and measuring spoons or cups, you can just measure out the weight using the scale and save so many dishes. I will link this exact food scale down below in case you want to check it out, but really I think the most important things are: one, finding one with good reviews, making sure that they're relatively accurate, it doesn't need to be perfectly precise, but pretty accurate, which you can usually tell from the reviews, and making sure that it is a rechargeable one and not a battery powered one. I made the mistake of getting a battery powered one and it was so annoying to change the batteries. Let's chat about some food scale basics, just some quick tips for using a food scale in case you've never used one before. So when you tap the power button, that will zero out the scale. So you can put a bowl or a plate or whatever container you're going to eat your food in onto the scale, zero it out. Then it will only weigh the food you add into the container after being zeroed out, so you can know the weight of the food you're eating without having to do any math to subtract the weight of the container you're using, because obviously you're not eating the bowl. Any good food scale will also go negative, which is super helpful because you can use something that I kind of call before and after weighing. When I saw saw someone do this for the first time, I was so mind blown. Basically, you can weigh something like, let's say, a bowl of popcorn or a bag of chips, zero out the scale, make sure that your scale will remember that previous weight or leave the scale on, then eat as much as you want straight out of the container, then weigh it again after to find the difference. So the scale will go negative in the amount that you ate. This is really nice if you want just like a quick bite of something, or you want to eat straight out of the container instead of pouring it into a separate bowl or dish. One way I really love using this is with oil. So I will put my oil container on the scale, zero it out, and then I will drizzle my oil in the pan, onto my avocado toast or onto my salad, whatever, put the container of oil back on the scale and it will show negative for however much oil I used. And this is a lot better than estimating in my experience, because oil is pretty calorie dense and small errors in estimation can have a huge impact on like your daily totals. Another quick tip about the scale, milliliters and grams are the exact same weight, so you don't need to bother switching between the two measurements. Same with when you're logging the food in MyFitnessPal or whatever tracking app you're using. Last tip is that annoyingly, cooked food and uncooked food weigh different amounts. So raw meat will weigh more than cooked meat. It's helpful to try to find an entry that specifies whether the food is cooked or raw, which is something I do for veggies, pastas, things like that. So I just had a little afternoon treat and I thought it would be a good time to share my next tip. At the beginning, I thought that I would just remember everything I ate in a day, but very quickly realized that it was actually quite hard to remember. If you're busy, you're at the office, you have a meeting you're about to run to, maybe you have class in a few minutes and you want to have a quick snack, but you don't have time to actually log it, what I like to do is just take a picture of it. Even better, if you're at home or you have your food scale, you can take a picture of it on the scale so you know the exact weight or serving. But if not, I'll just take a picture of the food in my hand or something like that. And then at the end of the day, I will go through my photos and then I'll have an easy reminder of everything that I ate that day, and I can add it all into my tracker at the end of the day. Just because I think I'll probably get some comments about this, wondering why during fat loss I'm eating Nerds gummy clusters. I've been obsessed with them, first of all. Second of all, the calories are not that bad. I know calories aren't everything. There's nutritional value and whatnot, but I have to be strategic to keep myself sane during fat loss. Keep in mind, I've been in a calorie deficit for the better part of 14 months, which can drive you a little bit insane, honestly. You can have 16 gummy clusters or 30 grams for 100 calories, which in my book, that's kind of a lot and it's pretty satisfying. So I try to find candies, treats, snacks, things like that that will satisfy my sweet tooth and leave me feeling satisfied emotionally, mentally, even if they're not super nutritionally dense. And I try to get my nutrition in other ways throughout the day. So you heard it here first. You can eat Nerds gummy clusters while losing fat. And that's one of the things that I love about tracking. It allows me the flexibility to have fun treats, know exactly how much I can have in order to still reach my goals and continue losing fat every day. While we're here, let's talk about the foods I actually don't track and why. Now, this may be a little bit controversial, but I'm just being honest here and sharing what I do and what works for me. I want to maximize my time spent tracking. So obviously there are things that are completely 0 calorie that I don't bother tracking. This sugar-free soda is one example, sparkling water. There's tons of legitimately 0 calorie stuff that I just don't track because that's a waste of time. But there are also things that are not 0 calorie, but are so low calorie that I also don't bother tracking them. Arugula, spinach, kale, any kind of leafy green, any kind of herb. This package doesn't even have nutritional information on it, but a cup of leafy greens is like 10 calories, no joke. I do the same thing when I add a splash of fruit juice to my sparkling water, or when I add lemon or lime juice on top of something, or when I use very low calorie sweeteners like stevia or monk fruit. Sometimes they have a few calories in them. I just don't bother. Let's say your calorie deficit is pretty small, like it's only 100 or 200 calories or something like that. If you are not precise with it, you can accidentally end up not in a deficit if you're not tracking these little things. But personally, I'm in enough of a calorie deficit that these little untracked foods here and there are not going to put me out of my deficit. If you're a beginner, it might be nice, at least for a couple of days or weeks, to track everything so that you can get a sense of what foods are worth your time and what foods aren't. But for me, not tracking these little 10 calories here and there from things like leafy greens, or even just being really lax with how I track things like berries or salsa or foods that you can just eat a ton of volume for very few calories, it's worked out fine for me. Depending on the person, this may or may not be effective for you, but it's something that's worth a try. Do with of that what you will. For now, my last tip is when in doubt, round up. There's a lot of really interesting research about having people estimate how much food they are eating. Essentially, we are just really bad at estimating. Even people who are trained about how to track and estimate still consistently underreport what they are eating. So when in doubt, when I'm estimating, I like to add a little bit more than I think I'm actually having, because in reality, that is probably closer to what I'm actually having than my initial estimate. I do have kind of a fun story for this one. So back a couple of years ago, I was obsessed. I mean, I still am. They're so delicious, but I was obsessed with the True Fruit frozen chocolate covered raspberries. And I thought, okay, it's fruit. It's a little bit lighter and less calorie than like an ice cream or a brownie or a cookie or something like that. So I was like, boom, healthy dessert. What I didn't realize is I was not aware of how small a serving size was. And I was eating probably 600 or 700 calories of raspberries a night, which personally for my size, my goals, my maintenance was very high. If you don't feel like you have time to track every single day all the time, even just weighing out a couple of times a serving size, just so you know, okay, this is about how many frozen raspberries I can have to have this many calories. I'm gonna sit down and do a little bit of work, and I will chat with you when I have my afternoon snack. The truth is, I'm still gonna eat this even though it landed on the floor. I did clean my floors last night. Another feature I wanted to tell you about quickly on MyFitnessPal that I really love is the quick add feature. So essentially you can go in and just add an amount of calories without logging an actual food. I'll tend to use this feature on days where I have a lot of little random bites and snacks that I want to make sure to have like a guesstimate in there for, but I don't want to track individually. You can just go into MyFitnessPal, tap quick add, and add in a calorie amount. And this is one of those moments where an estimate is always better than nothing, even if it's not perfect. I'm just gonna throw in 100 calories for good measure because I have been eating a ton of random bites, like a ton more than normal. I'm about to start prepping something for dinners tonight and this week. I thought it would be a perfect opportunity to tell you about one of my other favorite features on MyFitnessPal, the meals feature. MyFitnessPal allows you to save groups of ingredients and quantities as meals. There's also a recipe functionality in MyFitnessPal, but I personally hate the recipes feature. Recipes allow you to select different ingredients and quantities and save them, but it groups them together and does not allow you to see the individual ingredients, see the quantities, or make any adjustments. So you save it one time and then you have to just have servings of that exact combination. I prefer to use the meals feature because similarly to recipes, it allows you to pick all of your ingredients, add the exact quantities, save it as a group, but when you actually log it in your diary, it adds the individual ingredients separately and you can go in and adjust quantities or even delete the ingredient altogether. So I'm gonna show you how I'm prepping my dinner for this week and how I will save it as a meal to make it super simple and efficient to add it to my diary throughout the week as I eat it, and I'll still have the flexibility to make small tweaks and adjustments in case I switch things up any one night. Gonna start by prepping some guacamole. These are so good. I know this is probably hard to watch. Sometimes I forget to pre-measure something and realize later I want to measure it. What I like to do, if I have the exact same bowl or container, put the empty bowl on the scale, zero it out, then put the bowl filled with whatever on the scale, and then I know the exact weight of what's in that bowl, even though I've already added it. That guac turned out so good. I'm so excited for dinner tonight. Speaking of meal prep, I wanted to share my next tip, which makes things a lot simpler with tracking, which is to eat the same or similar things every day. So this may seem obvious, but there's actually a feature in MyFitnessPal that makes this even better. You can copy meals from previous dates to your current diary. Probably half or more of my meals are copied from previous days. Like for example, I always copy my coffee recipe because I have the same coffee almost every day. And then I just make slight tweaks if I have a little bit more of one syrup or a little bit more milk or, you know, whatever. I just find it can get a little bit tedious if you are constantly looking up new foods. So for example, if I had to log a completely new breakfast, lunch, and dinner plus snacks and dessert every single day for a whole week, I think I would lose my mind. I think the reason I've been able to spend so little time tracking and not have it take over my life is that I do eat the same or similar foods across the week. And that brings me to my next tip, which is eating at home or packing meals to bring with you on the go gives you a lot more control and makes it a lot simpler to track. But when I eat out, which I do eat out, an estimate is better than nothing, but eating at home will make it easier and faster. Honestly, eating out is just tough unless you're going somewhere like Chipotle where they have their nutritional information readily available and really flexible. If I get takeout and bring it home, weighing the servings of food is the best way that I've found to accurately estimate how much I'm eating. It can be really confusing when you go into MyFitnessPal and you look up like croissants, let's say, and you see one croissant that's 100 calories, one that's 200 calories, one that's 500 calories. And I remember I used to see that and just be like, what? Like, how is that possible? It's a butter croissant. How is it that different? The main reason something like a croissant could vary so much is actually the portion size. So how large the croissant is, because the base recipe of a croissant isn't gonna vary that much, right? It is of course possible for something that's a little bit more intricate, like a curry, for example, that the recipe could vary a lot. But for a lot of foods, the weight is actually the main thing driving the difference in calories. So I always like to look for a food in MyFitnessPal that has a gram or ounce or some kind of weight that I can use rather than just a single serving, so that I can be a little bit more specific and accurate. I personally do not bring food scales to restaurants. It's just not my journey. It's something you totally can do, but I definitely don't think you have to do it. Especially the more you track, the more familiar you become with serving sizes and how much things are gonna weigh. You can get better at estimating. Just not walking. Oh my god. So I'm done with dinner and dessert, and it turns out I actually have some extra calories today. Yesterday I was starving. I felt like I could just never get full all day, and today I find myself a lot less hungry than usual, which is actually something that happens to me quite frequently. I like to kind of go for a weekly average of my calories rather than trying to hit a specific amount every single day, because if I tried to hit my exact calorie goal daily, that would mean I would end up with some days where I'm overeating, like more past my fullness, and I would have days that I feel like I'm undereating and I'm starving and it's really hard for me to stick to my goals. Also, I understand that that was kind of a weird dinner, but I love the Quest protein chips. I'll probably have a snack or two tonight if I'm hungry. If not, I just like to kind of go with it, and that does make it a little bit easier to stick to it long term when you can be flexible with it. That brings me to my next tip, which is just to stay flexible. I realized that consistency over time is so much more important than being perfect. Over the last 4 months of tracking, I've taken full days off where I don't track anything at all, and I have certainly not been perfect, but I've still gotten amazing results. So I like to think of calorie tracking as a way to get some data, not that it has to be perfect or super precise. So starting with these calculators to create an estimate of what a deficit should be, but realizing that this whole thing isn't perfect. From the tracking, the measurements, the estimates, it's not a perfect science. It's definitely important to continue experimenting and figuring things out along the way. If you're watching this and you're still thinking like, oh, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to do this, I still think it'll be too time consuming, I still think it'll be too difficult, I won't be able to keep up with this, then I have some thoughts for you. I wish I could go back to myself a year ago and just tell myself, track for a couple of days, track for a week or two. You don't have to do it forever, but I wish I could have just given myself that so I could have gotten a general idea about how many calories I was having and find maybe a few swaps that I could make. make. So if you don't think tracking is sustainable for you right now, then that is a really great option. Pick one day or a couple of days or maybe a week that you can track your daily intake, because let me tell you, that can be super, super eye-opening, even if it's just as simple as seeing your serving size is a little bit better. Or maybe you're thinking, okay, I can track while I'm losing weight, but then what about when I want to go into maintenance? Then what? Like, do I have to keep tracking forever now? And honestly, this is something I don't have the answer to right now because I'm in a fat loss phase. I have not yet reached my goal physique and started maintaining. So based on my research, I think the answer is no. You wouldn't need to track forever once you go into maintenance. Here's my plan anyway. Based on my research, maintaining is a lot easier than losing weight because our bodies love to maintain. Our body can also adapt to our intake. So if we have slight changes up or down in our daily intake, our body can actually adapt to burn more or less energy doing the exact same processes to adjust for these small fluctuations. Personally, I plan to start eating more intuitively as soon as I hit maintenance and only go back to tracking when I have a specific goal, like building muscle or losing fat. I will let you know how that goes when I get there, and man, I cannot wait to get there. Maintenance sounds incredible right now. If you enjoyed this video and you are interested in fat loss, then you may enjoy my 75-day summer nutrition challenge video where I talk about the tools that have been super transformative for me in my fat loss journey and how you can apply them over a 75-day period. So I will link that up here if you want to check it out. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.